Good evening, everyone. I'm going to call the State of Rhode Island Coastal Resources Management Council's semi-monthly meeting to order. Today is Tuesday, July 14, 2026. I would ask the record reflect the council members that are present here this evening, as well as the CRMC staff that is present as well. First matter on our agenda will be approval of the minutes of the previous meeting, that being June 23, 2026. I know Lisa had sent them out. So I would
Move
entertain
the
a motion.
approval as distributed.
Motion is second. A motion has been made and seconded. Any discussion? None, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? That motion carries. Subcommittee reports, Director Willis.
There are no subcommittee reports tonight, Mr. Chair.
Staff reports.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple of items to bring to the council's attention. Next week on the 23rd, staff is going to be making its annual presentation to the Environmental Business Council. We meet with them annually to basically introduce the program to any of their new members and to discuss issues that they are looking to CRMC for direction on or updates on. In particular, resilience is a big issue with the environmental business community, as is legislative efforts over the past session. So we'll talk about those. We always give a CRMC 101 type of presentation. And it's just a good opportunity for staff to meet some of the new members of the business council and vice versa. So that'll be next week. And another outreach effort that I want to aware of.
What time and where is that?
It's downtown. Forgot the exact venue. It's right across the street from Johnson Wales. There's a hall there that was used. I can get the other information. Absolutely. It's a lunch meeting. It basically starts around 11 o'clock. We are also partnering with Rhode Island Sea Grant and the Woonasquatucket River Council in their presentation of the Woonasquatucket River Greenway. It's a walk along the Greenway here right downtown, and highlighting the efforts of the city, the River Council, Sea Grant and CRMC in opening up a lot of public access along the Woonasquatucket. As you all know, the CRMC has the Urban Coastal Greenway policy that it implements through projects in Cranston, Providence, East Providence, and Pawtucket for large-scale development that where developers are willing to offer more access, the regulations allow for the development to be built out closer to the shore, and the Urban Coastal Greenway recognizes that. So this particular outreach effort will showcase the Urban Coastal Greenways along the Woonasquatucket, as well as what the Rivers Council has done up there. So that is going on the 22nd, and that's a walk at 5:30. If anyone wants to join that, we can get you the sign up materials for that as well. That's it, Mr. Chair.
Any questions of Director Willis on the staff report? Seeing none. Move to our formal agenda, the application requiring a special exception before the council for public hearing and review and action. It bears number 2026-01-003, NRI TT RGG LLC et al. In City of Newport. Its current plan includes conducting maintenance activities along the entire 550-foot cliff walk length between Webster Street and Narragansett Avenue, Newport, Rhode Island. Our agenda contains a lengthy description over 2 pages, so I'm not going to read that into the record. I would just ask that the agenda be made part of the record as it gives an explanation to that. Is the applicant present this evening?
Mr. Chair, members of council, Turner Scott representing the applicant.
Kevin Gavin representing the City of Newport, also the applicant.
No. All right. Who's got, Amy's got this. I'm sorry, just Amy, thank you. If you could give a review for the council.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This application is to repair a 550-foot length of type 1 shoreline between Webster Street and Narragansett Avenue that collapsed several years ago during winter storms. For the public notice and application materials, the project was split into 5 sections. For the staff report discussion, the length was divided into 3 sections. The north and south portions are adjacent to the collapsed areas, And while staff agrees that maintenance to the cliff walk as a public resource is of high importance to the agency, the city, and the public, the middle section, that area of bedrock outcrop, is the area most at issue with this request, and on which we will focus these opening remarks. Since the writing of the staff reports, the city solicitors have contacted CRMC legal counsel and noted that through case law, the city of Newport maintains an easement for the cliff walk. The application has also been signed by a representative of the private property, and a document has been provided allowing the city to be the representative and active agent of the project on the private property. A temporary construction easement through the upland property can be obtained for the project. It is estimated that approximately 18,242 square feet or 3,830 cubic yards of permanent impacts will occur in Rhode Island tidal waters. At the location of the bedrock outcrop, there will be filling at an area noted on the submitted plans as section F-F. This portion of the project is considered by staff to be prohibited per the CRMC Red Book section 1.3.1 G3 and also Red Book section 1.3.1 J3A. The portion of fill along the base of the bedrock outcrop in tidal waters has been stated by the property owner's engineer to serve the purpose of protecting the private overlook that is located at the top of the bedrock outcrop. It is staff opinion that this work proposed is not necessary to serve the purpose of repairing the public access and is not the minimum necessary to achieve repairing the public access. The placement of stone along the bedrock as proposed was discussed with the city of Newport at pre-application meetings where staff stated it was not necessary, was not the minimum, and would not be supported. It is staff opinion that the design discussed in the September 2025 pre-application meeting adequately protected the north and south flanks of the outcrop and repaired the failures without filling the seaward face of the bedrock outcrop. If that portion of the property, that area directly adjacent to or under the private outlook requires maintenance, a separate application addressing those needs immediately adjacent to or under that structure may be submitted by the private property owners and considered by staff. Red Book section 1.3.1 J1 notes within its policies the situations where filling in tidal waters is permissible. It is staff opinion that the proposed work on either side of the bedrock outcrop meets these regulations. It is staff opinion that the portion along the bedrock does not meet these regulations and requires the issuance of a special exception. It is the opinion of reviewing staff that the portion along the bedrock does not meet the requirements for issue of a special exception. Staff recommends approval of the application by modifying the proposal to disallow the work along the bedrock outcrop.
Questions of Amy from the council?
Yeah, I guess I have a quick question. How can we modify the application for him?
The council's charge, they can do three things. They can approve an application, they can deny an application, and they can modify an application.
So your recommendation is that we modify the application such that we take out that work at section FF on the plans?
Correct.
Thanks.
Just a question, a follow up. I wouldn't consider it a modification of an application, but it's in a different assent that takes it in a modified submission. Would that be your interpretation as well, council?
You didn't catch that.
I said suggesting that we have the ability really to modify an application is a little different than we can approve an assent that reflects the lack of that.
Yes, you can go either way about it, honestly. It's you can either, under 4623 of the Rhode Island general laws, you can actually modify the application, which the council has done previously, or alternatively, you could approve with a condition that a particular portion be struck in accordance with staff's recommendations.
Thank you.
6 one, half dozen the other.
I get it's semantics, but the idea of modifying an application versus saying, okay, we'll approve this, but not that.
Any other questions of Amy? Okay, city coming first?
You gonna go, Kevin? I'll go. Okay. Well, the city is respectfully requesting that notwithstanding the staff's recommendation, that the entire application be approved to include that area of riprap adjacent to the outcrop. The city's engineer, Mr. Morgan, GZA, can explain some of the work that went into this final product. And there was a number of iterations of the design that reduced the amount of riprap there. So our engineer is of the opinion that it is necessary in that it is also the minimum amount necessary for this entire project to tie everything together and to protect the cliff walk slope and the foundation of that bridge. But I think the important thing to recognize is that the cliff walk runs under this bridge. That slope and that outcrop area supports the cliff walk. It just happens to be that there's a stone bridge that runs from the grounds of the Colette estate over the cliff walk path and onto a small overlook on that outcrop. At any time there's cliff walk repairs or restoration, the private fee title owner, whether that be the Preservation Society, Salve Regina, or the Colette estate in this case, there's an incidental benefit or a direct benefit to each property owner when the city comes in and makes repairs and restorations to the shoreline. And eventually, that shoreline is going to erode and work its way up to the inland area over time. So the fact that there's an incidental benefit that this project benefits the outcrop and the support for the overlook is really not material in our view to the application as a whole.
Even the witness is testifying, is he sworn or?
Mr. Sullivan, because he's an attorney, we don't typically swear attorneys in.
And
Mr. Morgan from GZA is here, and Mr. Turner, his client, has Bob Fairbanks, whose report is in the package that I'm sure you've seen. So anyway, they can explain, Mr. Morgan can explain the design and the how the amount of riprap adjacent to the outcrop was minimized. Now, going to, I think, the practical matter here is, the cliff walk is been recognized as a public easement, and it runs across private land. Supreme Court recognized that in a recent case that the staff alluded to. The Supreme Court also recognized that the city is the entity with authority and control over the cliff walk. So the city has the authority to make repairs along the shoreline, but as a practical matter, what is needed here to do the project is access to the work area of the cliff walk. And the city will need an agreement, an access agreement or temporary easement, whatever it would be called, from the property owner to use the inland area, the grounds of the estate, the mansion at this location, to stage heavy equipment and materials and to access the shoreline area where the work will be done. It can't be done from the water. So that's an essential aspect of this, to have an access agreement to do the work. Now, Mr. Scott can address this, but Mr. Scott has indicated that the property owner is not willing at this time to authorize the city to use the land to do the project, the 550 feet project from 40 steps in Narragansett Avenue to Webster Street, unless this 50-foot
area of riprap adjacent to the outcrop is approved. And that's just a practical situation that we're facing. We're told that they won't allow access unless this council approves the entire project. And let me just give a little more background on the project. As was noted, there were 2 areas of collapse back in 2022. And since then, this area of Cliffwalk has been closed, and then the public is detoured up Narragansett, down at Oker Point Avenue, and down to Webster Street for that 10th of a mile stretch. And I mean, it's really disruptive to the public use of this important tourist attraction. If we can't, I'm sorry. So anyway, to putting this project together, the city has worked to get $22 million in funding available from various sources. There's a $5 million congressional allocation. There's a $3 million 2024 Rhode Island Green Bond. There's 3.7 million municipal general obligation approved by Newport voters back in 2024. And the town is actually at this point nearing the finish line of an estimated $11 million federal highway protect grant, which stands for Promoting Resilient Operations for Transformative, Efficient, and Cost-Saving Transportation, which has undergone a rigorous approval process in accordance with the National Environmental Policy Act. So this is a major undertaking to get the funding together to undertake this project and get the Cliff Walk back in business over the entire 3.5 mile stretch. So say as a practical matter, it would jeopardize the whole project if this 550 or the 50-foot section of riprap is taken away from this project, and if that causes the owner to deny access, then we got a big problem. And we think that, as can be explained by Mr. Morgan, that we think that it is necessary, and it is the minimal amount necessary of riprap. And this riprap in the same area was approved in other projects, including the one that was mentioned back in 1975. So this is not a new thing to have, this type of riprap along this area of the Cliff Walk. And again, staff mentions 1.31J1C, which states, in considering the merits of any given proposal to fill tidal waters, the council shall weigh the public benefit to be served by the proposal against the loss or degradation of the affected public resource. We think that's clearly met here in terms of the public benefit to get this area of Cliff Walk repaired, a multi-million-dollar project, and get the public back using this. The public benefit is substantial. And if this area is excluded, we're at the risk of jeopardizing the access, which in turn would cause potential delays and disruption of the funding process and jeopardize these millions of dollars of funding that the city has been able to put together. So we think that all the criteria for a special exception under section 1.1.8A are met here. This is a public project. It's not a private project. That area in question is not a private project to benefit the overlook area of this private owner. This is a City of Newport project. This is a Cliff Walk project. So with that, we have Teresa Crean, the Director of Resilience and Sustainability, William Riccio, the Director of Public Services, and Russell Morgan, PE, the Principal for GZA Geoenvironmental, here to explain any aspects of this project that the board may wish to inquire into.
Well, at this time, does the council have any questions of Councilor? Yes, Mr. Bernardo.
Who is the owner of the overlook bridge to the overlook area?
The fee title owner of all property along the Cliff Walk, in this case, It's plat 36 lot 1. It's the Golette family. It's the Golette families. This property is one of the Gilded Age mansions built back in the 1800s by the Golette family, a family dynasty that for generations after generations in New York City. And they're one of the people in the Gilded Age that built one of these summer cottages, they call, along the cliff walk. This is one of the largest mansions along the cliff walk. It just so happens it remains privately owned. It hasn't been taken over by the Preservation Society and open to the public. But this is a magnificent mansion. It still happens to be owned by the Golette family in private ownership. But to answer your question, the fee title is owned by the Golette family, subject to the rights of the public and the city to the area of the cliff walk.
So if there was maintenance due on that bridge, it would be whose responsibility?
The bridge itself would be the property owner, but the
Okay.
cliff walk pathway runs under the.
Understood. There's comments here about the safety and pedestrians and I was just wondering who was responsible for that bridge. And is this the same property owner that wants or is basically conditioned access?
Yes. Yes, yes, it is. Mr. Scott represents.
I'd like to clarify that if I may.
And Mr. Scott
When
has,
given the opportunity.
and Mr. Scott has Bob Fairbanks, whose report you've seen from FTC Engineering here to address his report. He was retained by the property owner.
At some point, I would like to ask some engineering questions as well.
Would you like to hear from Mr. Morgan, GCA, on any?
I'll let you guys finish. Whenever Mr. Morgan comes up, I'll ask him my question.
Well, I've pretty much given my summary, subject to any details that the board, that the council may want to hear. Ms. Green can address funding issues if there's interest in getting more detail on that. Mr. Riggio can address the project in general and you know the work that's gone into for the last several years to try to bring this project to fruition. And but in terms of the engineering and details about the riprap area, that if there's questions in that regard, perhaps Mr. Morgan would be the person to delve into that.
Mr. Chairman, I think it would be prudent to hear Mr. Scott's opening statement first before we got into the technical, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was gonna do next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to start off by saying that I'd like to clarify some comments that Mr. Gavin has made. First of all, I'm going to start off by saying that when this cliff walk fell I received a call from Joseph Nicholson because he knew I represented the clients this property, and he was the former city solicitor. And he and I immediately started speaking about what the next step was. How do you go about correcting this? How can we be cooperative? How can we keep communication open? And Mr. Nicholson and I kept communication open for 3 or 4 years until finally the city decided, okay, now it's time to hire an engineer, and they did. She's the and there was no condition put on the property on the approval, not at all. The only condition, if you can say this is a condition, is that we'd like to have it done correctly. We'd like to have it done so it's done in a global manner and not the piecemeal manner that had been approved for years by CRMC and has failed. And that has happened all along the cliff walk for years. Only piecemeal approvals have been granted, and there have been failures. And now we have an opportunity, and over the last 3 or 4 years, maybe 5 years, CRMC has taken the position that we do need a global review, and they have done more than just the minimum along Cliff Walk, all along Cliff Walk. And that's what we said. We said we'd like to have it done. We'd like to have it done correctly. We want to get all of this done. And if you do it, if you're looking at it this from the sea, you see one failure here, and you've got a bed, what they call bedrock, the nub, the overlook, whatever you want to call it, in the middle. I don't know how you fix those two, how you connect that two up without having a cooperative engineering plan for the whole front. So we haven't said you can't come on the property. We've said, hey, listen, you guys got to do this the right way. We were never involved in the initial discussions that Ms. Silva seems to harp on with regard to their discussions with GZA. GZA has made changes based on comments that Mr. Fairbanks has made. And so we believe that the city needs to look at this, and CRMC needs to look at this thing from a global manner, protecting the whole front. Let's do it once. Let's not do it 3 or 4 times. Let's not wait 10 years and have, okay, we have to come back here again. We want to get it back on your property. This is a big piece of property that they have, and they're going to, we've negotiated along a big piece of swath of property in front of the client's property that will be occupied for a length of time for them to bring cranes, dirt, rocks, trucks in at all times. And we've negotiated that and been cooperative with them. With the only condition is you do it the right way. We had Mr. Fairbanks, and his report is in, I assume that you reviewed his report dated April 30th, 2026. He's here to discuss that and to present that. And if I may say so, Mr. Fairbanks has more practical knowledge about the waterfront than probably anybody in this room. And is recognized as an expert with regard to coastal management and coastal reef banks. My feeling is that, and so I agree with Mr. Gavin that this is not to protect the private overlook. That's private overlook is a part of the cliff wall, as is the tea house at Marble House, the tea house at the Marble House. Cliff walk goes underneath that. If all of a sudden the cliff walks, the tea house starts to fall in the water, are you going to say that's a private? Is the CRMC or the staff going to say that's a private piece of property? So we're not going to allow you to firm that up. This is basically the same thing. The walk goes under basically a historic structure that's been there forever for years. We're not, this landowner has been cooperative. They've been helpful. They've hired their own engineer. They've spoken with GZA. We've spoken with GZA on numerous occasions, met with them. We believe, as Mr. Gavin says, is that it's necessary, the proposal, and it's incidental to the project. I don't know, there's not much more for me to say. I'll let Mr. Fairbanks talk about the engineering aspects of it. But for me to say, for me, I think that what you're caught by allowing what the staff wants, you're not connecting up the 2 sides, not connecting up the 2 failures. And what that leads to more probability and possibilities and accelerating erosion and degrading generally over the scenic vista and the improvements that the staff has recommended approval for over time. And I don't think we want to be here and come back here in 10 years and say, listen, we need to fix this up again. We're back to the same position. I'll let Mr. Fairbanks talk about his engineering aspects. I'm not an engineer, but certainly his arguments ring true for me. So I'll let him talk about that when the time comes. I would like to make sure, however, Mr. Chair, that his report of April 30th is in the staff is in the packet. Thank you.
Any questions of Attorney Scott?
Not at this time.
Gavin, please proceed.
If I would bring up Mr. Morgan from GZA to discuss the actual riprap design at the outcrop and answer any questions, but give a summary and then answer any questions that the council members may have.
I will swear, Mr. Morgan, and Mr. Morgan, will you please raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? I do. Will you please state and spell your name for the record?
Russell Morgan, Russell. Last name is Morgan.
Might as well get Mr. Fairbanks on at the same time. Mr. Fairbanks, will you please raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Please state and spell your name for the record.
Robert W. Fairbanks Jr. ROBERT FAIREANKS Jr. JR.
Thank you.
You want a quick explanation of the kind of design process or answering questions?
Your attorney.
But why don't you give a summary of the design of the riprap at the outcrop?
So overall, the project, we had that first failure on the southern end of this length of the cliff wall. And so we were engaged to start to take a look at that. We did a inspection of the length of the property. We started to run design calculations and modeling. And then there was another failure at the northern end of the property where an old wall had been installed. And so now that scope grew. The design calculations to a large degree are based on the kind of soils and rock that is in the area. And we have a unique situation where we have a shale that's friable with your hands. It's susceptible to freeze thaw. It's susceptible to abrasion. And we have another rock type called conglomerate or pudding stone, which is very, very hard. So you have two different reactions. Above that bedrock, you have glacial till and a little bit of fill. So the retaining walls, the old retaining walls that were built along this length succumbed to erosion and collapse. This area of collapse was real specific. Based on our inspections of the entire site, starting from the southern limit, there were other issues that were identified: undermining of retaining walls, loss of soil outside of this real specific failure area. And we ran design calculations. We came up with about a 15-ton stone. So this is really heavy armor. And constructability was becoming a large issue for us. We continued that riprap slope up to this outcrop that we're all talking about. Initially, we stopped it at that outcrop and then continued it on the northern side of this outcrop to deal with the other failure. And that was based on immediate, apparent, and visible need of undermining or failure of the cliff walk. So we then, Bob Fairbanks got involved, identified some issues with the rock outcrop. We looked at it and didn't appear to be in imminent danger of failure. We decided to take a step back, run some calculations, and look at the system holistically, knowing that Bob had identified some movement at that overlook and/or the bridge. And so we included in our proposal riprap carried around that rock outcrop, essentially tying the northern riprap to the southern riprap. And that does a few things. There's advantages there. One is we can build this thing at once, meaning we get right away to the property. It gets constructed with really heavy equipment. We're talking about a 35-foot length of exposed bedrock, essentially. And it just made sense. If we're going to mobilize all this equipment, eventually that rock knob's going to let go. I don't know if it's in my lifetime or my great-grandchildren's lifetime, but it's going to go eventually. So we included the riprap around that rock knob. The other advantage of it is it now forms a kind of a linear barrier to that piece of shoreline. When you stop riprap and then start it again, there's kind of an area of chaos in there in terms of wave energy and impacts, and rocks get thrown up on it and further eroding the bedrock. By carrying this riprap in front of this rock knob, it makes a more of a kind of a holistic, resilient approach to the entire system. The design basis was based on a 100-year design storm. I think I mentioned wave heights ranging from 13 and change to a little over 16 feet. The design was completed in accordance with Army Corps of Engineers requirements. And we also added sea level rise on the order of about 4.3 feet. Once the wave breaks on the riprap stone, and that stone absorbs that energy, just like at the beach, you get runoff along the shoreline. So we carried riprap up, a little bit smaller stone to take care of that overwash material. Once we got beyond the overwash, then we then transitioned to traditional retaining wall in one area. So that's kind of the design. It's three kind of pieces to resilience along that shoreline. One is really heavy armor stone to absorb and allow that wave to topple. Second, to absorb energy and provide drainage for overwash as that wave climbs up that slope. And third, hard retaining walls like you would see on land to support the cliff wall. So that's kind of the basis of our thought process and our design.
Any questions, Mr. Morgan? Yes, Mr. Bernardo.
For us, is it the conglomerate bedrock or the shale bedrock that's susceptible?
It is shale.
But the armor stone is in front of the conglomerate?
Yes, it's interwoven along that whole shoreline. So it's not like just pick an elevation and we know we transition from one rock type
I'm
to
more
another.
concerned with the rock knob area.
Okay.
So we're protecting the conglomerate and there's no protection for the shale bedrock.
In the rock knob, it is both. We're protecting both within the wave energy zone.
Okay, because there's no riprap in front of that in the cross section FF.
Yeah, there is, Rich. Give me a moment here. It is. I put on my glasses, maybe sheet 18 and section F.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, are these cheaters? Thank you. So yes, we really struggled to design riprap in front of that rock knob because we didn't want to extend ourselves too far into the water. We still ended up with the same size armor stone and 2 layers of it, but it is a little bit steeper. So it does protect that bedrock. And again, because the geology laid stuff down in accordance with the glacial powers of B, it's not one straight elevation across the area.
In that section F again, you showed the first part of it, the 1.5 to 1 slope. The top below the 100-year still water level.
Yeah.
There's obviously, well, it's depicted as something substantially steeper. What's the slope on that?
The rock above our riprap?
No, from the 100-year, from the 10-foot elevation down, there's no indication of what.
Of the actual slope?
Just the size of the bowl.
You guys remember what that was? Was that a 101?
Well, you need your name.
Yeah, I can.
I can speak to that. You need your name. Tim Smith, BZA.
Mr. Smith, if you're going to be speaking, I'll have you come up and we'll swear you in. Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Please state and spell your name for the record.
Timothy Smith, TIMOTHY SMITH.
Thank you.
To answer your question, Richard, because that specific bedrock outcrop nub is highly variable in shape, right? This is a specific section cut through, one sliver of that bedrock, right? So we recognize that there's a lot of variables going on at play there. So yeah, right now that riprap is shown as at a steeper slope than a 1.5-on-1. It will be less than that at some locations, greater than that at others. And that's why we engaged kind of a drilled pin for a large riprap stone at the base of that to kind of anchor that steeper slope section and try to minimize the riprap impact to the environment outshore of that outcrop.
And Tim, that anchor goes in 2.5 feet,
That's right.
and that's made of,
Galvanized or stainless steel, 1.5-inch threaded bar. That'll be grouted through the stones.
I have a question. Sure. Mr. Smith, since he's sitting there, I'm assuming he's the design engineer and Russ is the
Yeah, you're right.
general manager of the team. If that overlook and that walkover structure over the clipboard were not there, would you design this way?
I mean,
that's a very pertinent question to this discussion.
yeah, so that's a great question. Realistically, if we're ignoring environmental impacts, we would design protection around this rock knob following the same design philosophy that we would the remainder of the cliff walk, which would push our riprap slope further out into the bend, right?
But we can't ignore environmental
That's right.
regulatory issues.
Correct.
We also can't ignore cost.
That's correct.
So my next question is, by not doing the riprap around the promontory, what are the savings to the city of Newport? Oh, I answer the first one first. If you would design it this way without that overlook and the bridge, but my follow-up is going to be about.
Yeah, we would. We would design it the same way, and that's because we're
What would the
sizing.
danger to the cliff walk be if that promontory were harmed, as opposed to our engineer who's basically stating that there would be no danger to the cliff walk?
Yeah, I mean, the danger to the cliff walk is what it is along the entire 3.5-mile stretch, and that, the force of nature is going to eventually, erode the existing shoreline structure. Like Russ suggested, it's comprised of shale and interwoven conglomerates. So that shale is going to slowly over time, it's going to erode. And eventually that's going to impact the structure behind that outcrop. It's a matter of time, I suppose.
Tim, can I add something to that?
I
haven't testified
I'd
yet,
like to
but-
just stick with
Okay.
him at this point in time. We'll get to, your presentation when you have an opportunity.
Sure.
So what about the cost?
Yeah, I mean, the cost is real. I mean, we've run some cost estimates and it's not exactly a fixed number, like you said, or like we've kind of suggested, if we have to come back in the future for access agreements, but just the raw materials,
Do you have a linear foot cost for doing this project?
Was around $1 million,
it's
right?
about $1 million to $1
To fill
million.
that nothing.
Fill that.
So if we don't do 50 feet, how much is the saving?
1 million.
It's about 1 million. That's right.
Yep.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
So originally you submitted a set of plans, if I read the report correctly, that didn't include any riprap. But
Right.
And it seemed like staff said it wasn't necessary. And if what I read is correct, you would agree it wasn't necessary. So what changed?
So our original design and layout was based on need. You walk out there, stuff's either failed or looks like it's about to fail. And we took a look at the rock knob and the rates of erosion of the shoreline there. And they were fairly small. The rock knob's there for a reason. It's pretty resilient. So that was kind of our initial pass. And Bob had gotten involved and looked a little bit deeper into that structure that's on top of this rock knob and noticed some cracks in it, noticed that something was happening. We took that, we listened to Bob, we ran some numbers on it. And when I say numbers, running stability calculations. And our calculations didn't show that this thing is a factor of safety 1, so meaning it's just teetering on stability. But I will say that this is not an easy thing as an engineer to model and to apply results to. It's a nature-based structure. The properties, the seams are not known. You know, the foliation of that rock is, if that rock was greased at a seam, it would slide towards the ocean. But it hasn't to date, and our numbers that we ran seem to support that, a reason why it hadn't fallen in the water to date. But again, that's engineers looking at data on a piece of paper and running calcs. That's not kind of real world, I guess. So discussing it with Bob and hearing his concerns, we added it in. And, you know, as I mentioned before, the advantages of adding it in was this project can be done as one project. 2, the project is more resilient if it's a continuous riprap shoreline. I don't know if I answered your question or not, sorry.
So basically, when you heard from Mr. Fairbanks, you changed the design, which was kind of about at the same time when we saw an email from Mr. Scott saying that you wouldn't get access unless you added it. So basically, you had to change it to get access.
That was one of the reasons. You're correct. And, you know,
It's not really engineering.
That's a yes or no question.
that's not engineering. You're correct.
Follow up for Mr. Morgan.
Yes.
So if our concern is the stability of the overlook and the walkover bridge, what are the alternatives to stabilize that? I mean, you know, I'm not an engineer. You know, I've read a few plans in my day.
Sure.
You've got an existing retaining wall shown on your proposed section F. And obviously that retaining wall is not pinned down to the shale bedrock. Couldn't you just replace that retaining wall, pin it into the shale bedrock and provide the stability that way?
No, because I think the concern on the rock knob is.
Well, Mr. Fairbanks, who we'll get to, is stating that there's this shifting, and the whole reason for the necessity under the special exception is public safety, because the bridge could fall and hurt somebody. So I'm just trying to see if there's an alternative,
Sure.
which is our obligation to look for, you know, the lesser impacting environmental alternatives.
Right.
I look at this as, you know, a web biologist, and I'm saying, fix the retaining, redo the retaining wall. You've got $1 million.
So to answer your question, from my perspective, it's less about kind of acute structures on this knob and more about the entire knob sliding or failing in slope stability. So it would just take everything with it. Fixing or making something more resilient that sits on top of it doesn't really fix that global stability issue.
But historically, you stated the rate of erosion on that knob is nominal.
Sure. No, it's right. That is a correct statement. But as we know on the shoreline, the failure is instantaneous, I guess. It's not our data year over year suggests a constant rate of loss of shoreline. But in fact, that loss to some degree, is a whole series of large failures that happen immediately.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Any questions? Please, continue.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to have Mr. Fairbanks speak about his letter and his thoughts on this and his engineering review of it. I did forward staff a copy of his resume. I don't know if that got into the packet. I have copies here. As long as it's in the packet, I'm fine with making sure that that's a part of the resume or part of the Bob, can you review your letter and your thoughts on this and through the history of discussions with the GZA and the city?
This has been a very cooperative project. I've been involved representing the owners. I've been working at the Over Point site since 2015. I've done a number of repair projects along the cliff walk. Several of them were special exceptions similar to this. I stand by my conclusion that this repair, as designed by GZA, as Russ Morgan just discussed, meets the special exception, compelling public purpose. And for one reason, my only concern with the bedrock knob is the fact that bridge, which weighs 10 tons, can fall onto the cliff wall. That's it. Now we know somebody was walking on the cliff walk when we had the slope failure. That's what happens along these areas. They're bedrock, they're unstable bedrock. If you go back through the history of the cliff walk, you'll see that the cliff walk from 40 steps south has been closed for long periods of time. The hurricane of 38 basically kept it closed right up until we came out of World War II, or to fix it until after that. We got it fixed right after World War II. Hurricane of 54 hit. The cliff walk stayed in peril in areas all the way until Senator Pell got involved and finally held the floor's feet to the fire. And in 71, they came in and they revetted a whole series of the slopes along the cliff walk. In the early 70s, that included a CRMC ascent, do exactly what we're asking to do right now. Approved. The entire shoreline revetted. So again, clear. Just a public school kid, I like to keep it simple. The concern is that if that bridge falls, it can hurt someone. It can kill someone. Now, as far as cost goes, I have done a lot of revetment work. I've done a lot of revetment work on the cliff wall. Whenever you have to return a revetment, means you end it. You have to take that stone and move it around, right? Because this is designed as a layered system. We have big armor stone on top. We've got smaller bedding stone underneath. You can't leave that bedding stone exposed. So what we have are two sections of cliff wall of revetment coming together at the knob. I hear a lot of numbers being thrown around on this knob. The knob is 25 feet wide. The repair is almost 600 feet long. So we're talking about a 25-foot wide section. I now have to stop at the edge of that. I have to return the stones at 1.5 to 1 at each edge. They have to encroach into that 25-foot section. I end up with a sliver in the middle. But not only that, I've now created a ski rink. As the waves come in, they increase in size and they pound not only the conglomerate, but they pound that shale that sits above it. And if you look at the photo that I have in my report, there's a bird's mouth that has already developed above the conglomerate, where that shale has just been eaten out. You can see clearly that it's jointed and bedded to the south. So when it lets go, it's going to let go in one piece. I'm already seeing movement of the stone masonry wall that supports the overlook. The overlook is non-consequential. I don't want to speak for the owners, whether or not they use it, don't use it. It's the bridge that is the concern. I've talked to the Cliff Walk Commission about their appetite for removing the bridge. There are very few of these unique structures on the cliff walk. And this is one of them, one of maybe 3 or 4. The tea house, the tunnel down near Miramar, and this. If you remove the bridge, we probably wouldn't be having this discussion. Because that knob is definitely stronger, better rock than what we have on either side. Now, we did borings 30 feet back from the retaining wall in Oprah Point. All of that shale, highly fractured, very soft. So when it goes, it's all going to go. The other thing that was mentioned in the staff report, like that we want access. That's why we're doing this, so that the owners can maintain access to the overlook. That is not it. The owners have spent a lot of money repairing that bridge, repairing their retaining wall. They do that on their nickel. The concern is public health, safety, and welfare. And as someone who sat on the professional engineering board, as a professional engineer, that is our main responsibility, to protect the public. And we've got the public that's walking under that bridge. That seems to have gotten lost. Now, it's unfortunate, I didn't sit on the early meetings with CRMC, so maybe I wasn't able to voice this, but I certainly had the conversation with Rich. We don't agree, but that's the concern. If this goes and it goes suddenly, just like the slope went when a young lady was walking, thank God she wasn't there, she was 20 feet away, somebody can get seriously hurt. Cost. We have to return. I know we've thrown out a number of $1 million. I can't imagine it costs $1 million to prevent 25 feet, especially since we're going to take up a portion of it with the returns that we have to place there, because the toe comes out past the edge of the existing overlook, nub, whatever you want to call it. On top of that, we've got a structure that we know is moving. We are now going to make it the conditions worse. So we know it's moving without anybody doing anything there. Now we're going to have probably 6 months, 9 months of heavy construction, vibratory equipment all over the backside of that cliff, shaking things. We're going to be dropping huge rocks next to it. And then the icing on the cake is we create a ramp. So we take all of this high energy waves and we shoot it right up into the softest of the bedrock. So when that overlook goes, it's going to go quickly. And that bridge will be impacted. Now, Easton's Bay, I think everybody in the room is familiar. I don't know if anybody's a surfer. Easton's Bay is actually tracked by an international surfing site. It always has high energy waves. That's why the surfers love it. It's great for the surfers. It's horrible for the cliff walk or any of the bedrock around there. And you look at the lower rock that we've talked about, the conglomerate, take a look at a couple of the photographs that I have in my report. You'll see the existing stone masonry retaining walls that sit on that rock have been undermined. That means the solid bedrock has been worn away. Now, I know that this has been, we've talked, but this is the overlook structure. If you don't mind, I just want a couple of photographs. This is the edge of the overlook structure.
Sir, was this submitted as part of the package?
It wasn't, but I'm just showing a crack that sits right there that clearly shows that there's movement of that rock structure at the nub. I mean, it may be helpful for me.
So all material that's going to be used as evidence here has to be submitted 7 days prior to the hearing.
Okay, I mean, this is just, we've got photos here that clearly show we've got a vertical crack.
So you can describe it as part of your
I can't.
testimony?
So basically, this is the overlook nub here. There's a vertical crack right through that bedrock that's moving out to sea. Now, we know from the borings, we know from the failure, and it's in my report, that the bedrock, unfortunately, is bedded and jointed, sloping to the south and unfortunately sloping to the north. So the issue is when it lets go and it slides, as Mr. Morgan had said, you end up with that surface that exists, maybe a little bit greasy, especially in shale. That shale is silt, it's clay. So when it starts to move, it moves very quickly. There's not a lot of friction there, and it fails in big sections. Now this, I'm sure you probably can't see it, but this is the other overlook structure that sits, the big retaining wall that sits closer to Salve. You literally have a 2 foot to 3 foot hole underneath the existing stone. So it's an older structure. It's probably not more than 100 years old. And we basically eroded several feet of solid bedrock from underneath there. It's Mother Nature. Mother Nature always wins. It's relentless. It will continue to pound this shoreline. This is a unique opportunity, in my opinion. We've had long stretches where the cliff walk has been closed because of lack of funding. We have the funding. Funding is in place. That almost never happens. And again, because we are protecting the public that walks under that bridge, in my opinion, and said I've done several of these special exceptions, it clearly meets the standard for compelling public purpose. And I think I can get more into this, but that's pretty much the highlights of my report and my concerns as a professional engineer and somebody that's worked in the coastal marine area from Maine to Tortola, designing these types of structures. Based on my experience, it just makes sense to revet the entire shoreline. Originally, I was shut down. I pushed to go all the way to 40 steps because end effects on these structures are always difficult. So we are tying into an existing revetment at Salve, but we stop at Narragansett. So we have to return the structure there. That'll leave a gap between us and 40 steps.
Any questions for Mr. Fairbank?
Go ahead, go first.
Okay, same question I asked Mr. Smith, what are the alternatives for shoring up the bridge without doing the revetment? And I assume
Obviously-
with your expertise, you're not gonna say there's none, you're gonna.
No,
there are some alternatives.
Scott, there's always alternatives. You can remove the bridge, which the cliff wall commission will probably, be against. We can try to support that bridge on independently drilled piles. The retaining wall is a non-starter. The concern is if you have a massive fail, there's always the possibility a couple of spindly drilled in wiper piles will more than likely move enough to still drop the bridge. But that would be an alternative.
So I'm trying to pull up the map while we're talking. Keep going.
Yep. So that's really the only two options I see is put it on a deep foundation that's drilled through the softer rock into the harder rock, similar to what they're doing in the retaining wall that's at the southern end of the project. But again, keep in mind, you're still going to end up with stone in front of the overlook. You should have to return the revet. It has to be protected at the flanks.
So there is an option to improve the stability of the bridge
It's always an option, Scott.
without putting the riprap in front of the property. It's I take it that it's better and it's more effective, but again, we're faced with minimizations. And as much as I may emphasize with everything that's been said here tonight, we're faced with minimization. And if there's an option for minimization that is available and it hasn't been looked at, then while you say you may meet the compelling public purpose, you don't meet the minimization standard. And you need to meet both. It's a two-part test to overcome the special exception. So that's the problem I'm having.
Isn't minimization what they've done all along, and that's why it's failed? Yeah,
again,
that's
Mr. Scott,
clear.
We're just talking to your experts right now. I understand you can summarize with Mr. Gaffney here.
That's Scott, that's a good point. And there's always another way to approach something, but it wouldn't be my first choice. But I understand where you sit as a regulator. I am still convinced at the end of the day will be less expensive to build in one continuous run, just knowing I built a lot of these structures. They are not easy, and especially here, trying to get returns in place with big stones, double layers. You may end up going out there and we spent more money trying to support the bridge, and I've healed the entire cross section up to 25 feet. I've got stone touching stone. Will that be a problem for you?
follow up. Mr. Paul.
Sure.
So one of the comments in Mr. Fairbanks' reports, was that if we don't have access, you might have to do this project, you would have to do this project from the water. What's the ballpark change delta in cost if you have to do this project from the water?
I do not have that number. We looked at that option and came to the conclusion that there's not a contractor who would sit a barge out there just because there's so much rock outcrop just offshore. That's not very deep. So it's just not possible to ground a barge. There's not sand to ground a barge on. There's pointy bedrock. So.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Follow up. Mr. Fairbanks, you said it wouldn't be your first option, but what I believe I heard you say is that creating a different structure to support the bridge was a viable option.
I would probably, Mr. Sullivan, go at this from two angles. I would, if we were gonna support the bridge, I'd probably also want to put some type of rock anchors through the existing rock so that you attack it in two different ways. You try to knit together, just keep in mind, that rock is highly eroded. Look at the bird's mouth that exists right there. That's only gonna get worse. When we build this structure, the wave forces are gonna get focused in. So you need a way to protect that rock and protect the bridge. Because again, we're talking about putting in an 8-inch diameter steel pipe. If everything slides, that's gone. You're still gonna end up with, an issue. It would be helpful, but if there was a significant failure, the bridge would probably still.
Bernardo.
Bob, what are the maintenance records of that bridge? I'm concerned about the condition, and we're talking about failure. There could be other things that lead to the failure of this bridge, and this the installation and the construction work, if I'm hearing, is going to be jostling. How do we know that this thing is going to be standing up if we put this revetment in?
Good question. The owners are very active in inspecting the entire property. So they just spent about $400,000 redoing the existing retaining wall and addressing the bridge. So that was done, it was before the failure in 22, was probably done just before COVID or right around the time of COVID. So it's a stone arch bridge, Richard. So those tend to be.
A picture of it in your report, and it looks like there's some bleed through of the rock. I'm just wondering if the repairs were done before this photo or after this photo.
They were actually doing repairs when that photo was taken. So it's from probably 4 or 5 years ago, but we did address loose stones within that structure. So with these arch structures, it's all about keeping the stone intact, as you know, Richard, to make sure we don't lose that critical arch or enough stone that the entire thing fails. This would be monitored throughout construction.
And the arch bridge is the stronger of most structures. So if it's being monitored and repairs to the joints are being maintained, this should last as long as the ones in Rome.
As long as we don't lose its support. I'm not worried the bridge is going to crumble and fall. I'm worried that when the overlook moves laterally, you lose your support. So it's literally like an abutment failure.
Yeah.
The abutment has now swung and the span doesn't cover it anymore and it just slips off. That's the concern.
Thank you.
Any other questions at this time?
The
Yes,
bridge
Mr.
safe
Gagnon.
now? Are they using the bridge now? Is it safe to go? out there?
Nobody-
Doesn't Sound like it's.
No, nobody can access, Ron, I didn't mean to cut you off there. But I basically have a fence 25 feet off of the wall. They can't go in there to cut grass. They can't go to the overlook. They had to buy a robot lawnmower It's actually kind of cool. And it cuts the grass, but nobody gets near there. Even we've set up monitoring. So we've been monitoring the walls since the first failure and the second failure to see if we've got any lateral movement. Not on the overlook, because we couldn't set anything out there, but we've got them on top of the existing wall. And we do that a couple of times a year. There's a little bit of movement, but with this type of shoreline, and you can look it up online, the erosion rates are generally, because it's rock, shown to be small, but you have catastrophic failures. So it'll stay good for 20 years, 50 years, 100, whatever, and then you'll have a big slide. And that's what typically happens. And with sea level rise and the increased frequency of these big storms, it's a very dynamic area. And keep in mind, we're designing, these structures are typically designed for what's called a significant wave height. So the significant wave height is, the 67%. So a third of the waves are larger than that, surface no net. So just to give you an idea, just to go from the significant wave height to the 10%, the H10, you get a 27% increase in wave height. To go to the H1, you get a 67% increase. Now, wave forces vary by the cube of the wave height. So if you double the wave height, you increase the force by a factor of 8. So 8 times the force. So forces get big in a hurry. If you've ever gone out to Rough Point, when it's really kicking out there, I mean, it shakes the ground. I worked at Miramar next door and the Dick's house and also Rockcliffe. I mean, you're literally standing there and the ground is shaking and the waves are hitting 300 yards from you, 400 yards. What?
Is there a reason why you didn't provide any of that information in your report? What's kind of vague, there's no engineering, there's no analysis, there's no geotechnical information, it's just kind of speculation.
You didn't, Ron, you didn't get the borings? I mean, we've got several borings back there. They should have been with the package or on the plans. Basically, the site is till over shale bedrock, over conglomerate. The shale bedrock, even back in the yard, 30 feet, 40 feet away from where this failure was, still highly fractured and soft. And that, I mean, I've seen that up and down before. But no, I apologize. Usually in the notes, we'll talk about what the what the design wave height is. I didn't realize that it would have been helpful to go through that. I talk about the wave energy and this being a very dynamic area and being a surface, surfing mecca that's tracked by a website, an international website. But we get really big forces here, and storms aren't getting smaller. They're larger and they're more frequent. So again, this section of the cliff walk has been closed for long periods of time. Just going back to 38, there's also was some big hurricanes back in the late 1800s that did damage, but cliff walk wasn't as heavily used. I think it was used by the soldiers back World War I, basically do their patrols and look for anything offshore. Same thing in World War II. But it's just been a continuing issue. And if you walk the cliff walk and you've been there, you see the bedrock, you see how bad the bedrock is. And this is a unique opportunity where the money exists to basically just take care of this entire thing. One fell swoop, 600 feet from Narragansett to Webster. And the contractor, I can tell you from experience, will have a much easier time building this thing in one section. The end effects are always a problem. It's something that I'm grilled on constantly when I go in for a CRMC application. How are you returning your structure? How are you going to ensure that you're not going to increase forces on the edges? Well, that's exactly what we're doing here. Holy mackerels. You're just asking to just drive the forces through the roof right here at a very bad location. But my opinion based on my experience.
Any other questions? Yes,
May I just excuse myself for a moment. I'll be right back.
Oh, sure.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes, Mr.
What
Sullivan.
I'll ask is simultaneous. Let's start with you. We have a staff objection.
We hold on here because we have a member missing. Are we gonna continue on discussing this matter while the member's missing, or?
Oh, we'll wait. We'll wait.
Big plot, big for all this.
We can do that. Anywhere else, and so it'll take a few minutes.
Well, yes, take the 70+ race.
That doesn't include me then.
You've always.
Ryan, we back on? All right, we convene. I think there was a question that was posed.
Yeah, I was prepared to ask because we have 3 engineers, all licensed professionals. One who started up has been consistent in suggesting that this is not a need. We have one who originally was not needed, but then after political pressure and others became needed. We have one who all along working for the client, the owner, said, so how do I, as a biologist, reconcile 3 professional engineers, one who has to change a heart after what I read the record and some of the emails, which are patently offensive and troubling. How do I reconcile this?
Good question, Mike.
And I want to know what's.
Yep.
How much skin in the game is there from the property owner? It's like, no, you can't use my property. They're right. But are they putting anything into it other than use my property to fix it?
Michael, very good question. I can only tell you that I take the ethical standards, my professional engineering license, very seriously. So I don't throw out recommendations because somebody asked me to or put pressure on. I'm telling you, as somebody who's been doing this for 40 years, this is how I would design it. No question about it. I would never change my mind. And my colleagues also, I've worked with them for decades. And I know they wouldn't either for political pressure.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to comment on that. Mr. Sullivan, are you saying that Mr. Moore changed his
Mr. Scott,
view because of what I
excuse me,
said?
Mr. Scott, one of the count. Sorry, took a second because I know there's just. I got Mr. Gagner's asking a question.
I was gonna ask, I understand that this may be from an engineering perspective, easiest and most efficient way to do this. But it doesn't meet the regulations. That happens a lot. You could have major walls all across the shoreline. That would be protective, but would not meet regulations. So something has to give. I think what staff is suggesting, this is not necessary in this area. It also violates the regulations. Doesn't meet the special exemption criteria. So there's going to be a plan B. So they kind of discussed already, you know, that is viable and that is something that can be considered.
Ron, I hear what you're saying. I disagree that this isn't the minimum, but I do have something that I just thought of. Looking at that rock, even though it's conglomerate down below, there are several vertical cracks in it. You look at the rocks just offshore, that's called bun rock. Shows up on Google, shows up on nav charts. It was part of the same bedrock that makes up what we're calling the nub or the overlook right now. Now, 1,000 years ago, that was probably proud and has worn itself away. If you look at the plans and you look at where the toe of the revetment is going to be at either side, and where the toe of the revetment is going to be in front of the nub, they're almost in a straight line. Now, a way to bring in the last 4 or 5 feet so that it is truly the minimum amount is we can just chip away the end of that nub and fill it in with revetment stone. The nub is going to go. It's not nearly as hard as the stone that's going to go back in there for the revetment. And we are going to increase the forces on the nub with the construction that we're discussing. We're going to focus the wave energy. If anybody watched Chasing the 100-Foot Wave, this is exactly what they had off of Portugal. They had basically a trench. They took that water, and as it got shallower, the waves built until they had a 100-foot wave try to ride. You want to do that, but you're setting up a similar scenario here, where you're going to focus wave energy onto rock that is soft and is eroding. Even the rock down below, the conglomerate, the stuff that those retaining walls are sitting on, you clearly see in the photographs that they're undermined.
Other questions? Keep presenting. Anything else to present?
I have nothing to add unless something else that we've got.
Little louder, please.
I have nothing else.
I have a question. No, it's appropriate to raise it. You can.
And Richard and Amy, we've heard a lot about, you know, the concentration of the wave energy on the overlook if it's not enclosed by the revetment that's proposed for the north and south portion of Clifford. And what's your professional opinion about what the effect of that wave energy would be?
Right, you can, and thank you for asking. So if they were to make a tunnel, it's probably not the best idea, but they can put a return, so it returns gradually to each side of that bedrock. That's what they originally had planned. And you know, to have that a direct impact is most likely you're not going to have the waves exactly at that angle, but you could also just make sure you make a return that goes gradually into the north and south flanks. So you don't have that tunneling effect that they speak of. So it can be designed, and it was designed at one point, but that went away when they decided to do this other design. I just want to also add, you know, we talked about the conglomerate bedrock and how they're going to rip wrap. If you look at that sheet 18, and it's that F section that we keep speaking of, you can see that they plan on putting stone up to the FEMA flood elevation, which is the 100-year storm of 25 feet. Again, you know, my professional opinion is, and I was sticking to that, nothing's changed since I heard all this testimony, that putting that stone serves a little purpose to protecting that shale, and that shale is weak. But luckily, you're gonna have some riprap on the north and south flanks. But to put that riprap below that shale will provide little protection for that shale area. Again, they can also, if they choose, they can protect this. They can perform maintenance on this bridge. They can perform maintenance on this overload since it's been there for eons. That would be allowed under our program.
Question,
Just
just follow up to Richard. Richard, you used the term little. Can you quantify that little? Is it a 10% better?
What was a little, oh, as far as the
degree of protection?
I shouldn't have said little. I don't think there's gonna be any protection because of the putting riprap stone in front of this background. It's my professional opinion. I don't know how that is going to impact that shale area when it doesn't extend up the shale area, which is impossible because it's so steep. And I get why they can't. It's just the situation they have out there.
I guess I have one more follow-up question. Richard, answering questions here. This application was submitted in December of 2025. Did I get that right, Ian?
Yes. Yeah.
And we're here today, 7 months later.
Yes.
Pretty quick turnaround for this level of application. Did you receive any type of alternatives analysis from the applicant looking at different options, or was this the only one that was presented as part of the application?
This was the only one.
We did that in the pre-application process. There were 3 pre-application meetings that were held. There was a meeting in 2023. There was a meeting in the fall of 2025 that discussed the various alternatives. And the question of putting riprap in front of the bedrock or not was discussed multiple times during those meetings. It was also discussed after the application came in at the 3rd meeting in January, where we again stated that we did not believe it was necessary. And we held the public notice so that the applicant could consider and discuss that.
Yeah.
And we were told they would like to proceed as submitted. Please send it to us.
So yeah, I guess what I was leading to is my line of questioning with both engineers in terms of alternatives to improve the stability, the structural stability of the bridge, which seems to be everybody's concern. You weren't presented with any of those alternatives. And obviously, number 3 of the special exception criteria requires alternatives. That no reasonable alternative means of or location or serving the compelling public purpose or something. So you didn't get into those alternatives briefly.
Correct.
Thank you.
If I could maybe just clarify that answer, the bridge wasn't part of the initial application. The initial application was to repair the 2 fallen sections. And that is what all the documentation presented.
When Mr. Fairbanks presented his report, he cites the bridge concern for the compelling public purpose. That's why it just, for me.
Correct.
So I understand. I read the whole thing.
Any other questions of the witnesses at this time? Either attorney have any other witnesses you want to put forth tonight?
Excuse me, I do not.
Neither do I.
No.
None.
At this time, then I would ask, is there anyone else present this evening that wishes to speak in favor of the application? Yes, sir.
Never sure if I am speaking in favor or with support on some of these when I have issue with just 1 or 2 things. My name's Chris Dodge, I'm a Narragansett Baykeeper for Save the Bay. I'm here this evening in support of a large portion of the project and mostly in support of staff and their recommendations. Just wanted to keep my comments brief, but thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, members of the council and staff, for hearing this all tonight. So Save the Bay agrees with staff recommendations that the overwhelming majority of this work, which includes some filling and hardening in type 1 waters, meets criteria for of 1.1.8 for special exceptions for this work, as they support building public purpose by stabilizing a portion of the cliff walk that was undermined by storms and erosion, and that the majority of that work represents the minimum required to complete this, and with no other alternatives reasonable. I know that a project of this nature, proposing some hardening in type 1 waters, might be a time where you all would expect to be hearing from us in opposition to this, and that wasn't the case this time. We did not file up during the public comment period any written comment, but given the public nature of this project and its well-recognized scenic value and the public good that the cliff walk serves, that was our reason for not submitting in the first place. But we do agree with the staff assertion that the proposed work at that FF section, which we're all talking about today, represents both unnecessary filling in state's intertidal waters, and given the nature of the bedrock that is already present, taking staff's word for it, I'm not a geologist or an engineer, that it represents work that is with the sole purpose of shoring up some of this private structure, and thus would not be eligible for the special exemption being requested, and could be reviewed as a separate proposal by the applicant and private property owner. If the private property owner saw, we're concerned about public safety in this issue, there seems to be reasonable alternatives to shoring up that structure, or potentially, I know this is probably unpopular opinion, but demolishing that structure. To riff for a moment, given what's been talked about here, it strikes me that this area is inherently susceptible to high wave energy, lots of erosion, potentially large evulsive events. And that, I think, is not eliminated by any amount of armoring that's done there. With regards to the walkway and the overlook, I don't see how that is a compelling public purpose, as there is no public access to that overlook or to that bridge. While it is purportedly for public safety, that I understand, but I don't see how it's for a public good. And there does seem like reasonable alternatives in that case to protect public safety by taking down the bridge or taking down the walkway. Not necessarily that we are advocating for that, but it does seem like an alternative. In that if there is an evulsive event that causes the loss of that bridge, it would likely result in the loss of other portions of the walkway to begin with. So riffing aside, I appreciate the time tonight to talk. I appreciate staff comment, and would just like to say that, again, that Save the Bay is in agreement with staff that we would see approval of this pending any amendments or modifications necessary to allow for the special exception. Thank you.
He's gone.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Sam Sacco, S-A-C-C-O. First name Sam, S-A-M. I think I stand in two camps. I'm a faculty member at Salve Regina University. Salve, as you know, is a major abutter to the Cliff Walk. I am also Salve's representative on the Cliff Walk Commission. I am authorized in both cases to say that we support the submitted design and concur with the analysis and conclusions outlined in the engineering study that was developed by Mr. Fairbanks. Specifically, that the overlook outcrop should be protected as part of this project in accordance with the design submitted. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else present this evening who wishes to speak in favor of the application? So if anyone that wishes to speak in opposition of the application? Anything in conclusion, do you have the attorneys?
I would just reiterate that based on Mr. Fairbanks, especially his report and recommendations, and as well as Morgan's explanation of the work that went into minimizing the amount of revetment, I believe the standard is met, and I think if there's any benefit of the doubt, it should go to reopening the to fixing the entire stretch, the entire 500 plus feet from Webster to Narragansett, and getting this section of cliff walk back open without jeopardizing the actual practicalities of the construction and the issues regarding funding. I think that is well, it's not an engineering issue. I think it's an important consideration in terms of weighing the benefit to the public and the public interest. So I'd ask again that the entire application be approved without eliminating the revetment at the outcrop.
I echo Mr. Gavin's comments on that. And I would like to point out that I did in the beginning. The owners of this property have been in constant communication and cooperation with the city with regard to this. They had no conditions other than we wanted to do the repair should be done in a comprehensive manner, coordinated manner, and the coordinated design that has come to this application through Mr. Morgan, through GZA, and through Mr. Fairbanks, I think does that. Minimization, if you look at minimization, that's why we have problems. That's why you have problems with cliff walk, because we only do the minimum. Let's do it right. Let's do the global consideration and do it right. And I think that's better to look at. It's the minimization. Can you minimize it? I don't think what what you can do to uphold the bridge or the overlook, that's not important. What's important is what's underneath it. That's what's going to fall. That's going to bring the bridge down. It's going to bring everything down. I'm going to stand on Mr. Fairbanks's report. I think it's a appropriate report. I think it's right when you look at the whole cliff walk in that area and how to fix it. I take offense at the political pressure. There wasn't any political pressure. We said, look at this. And he looked at it. As Mr. Morgan said, he looked at it and he said, hey, you're right. Mr. Fairbanks, you're right. That's what we should do.
Well, your email, with all due respect to city staff, clearly exhorts them to apply political pressure. Your words, not mine.
Yeah.
On the record.
And I think I agree that there should be some political pressure here because you need to cliff walk. And you need to have it done correctly. And that's what I said. You need to have it done correctly.
Correct is different than politically expedient.
Look at it any way you want to, but I think that for the council to look at it in a myopic manner in the way the staff has done is incorrect. And I think you look at the whole coast there and not look at, okay, well, we don't have to do that part, but it'd be better, as Mr. Warren says, to do the whole thing as Mr. Fairbanks said.
Just a very quick question of
Yes.
Attorney Gavin.
Yes.
In your opening, Attorney Gavin, you mentioned that the lion's share of the funding, 11 million, was from the Federal Highway Protection Grant. Is that what
It's called a Protect Grant.
is that received or
I think it's still in progress. Ms. Crean can answer any questions about that.
it's important. So that money is not in hand. That's something that's being processed right now.
Would it be okay?
Would you mind? I think that's kind of important if we asked.
That's right. Much better.
I'd also like to ask Director Riccio to come up because Director Riccio has been involved in the Protect Grant. Both of us could speak on that.
But I just need to know if it's in hand or if it's in process. And you need to be sworn in.
So I'll start with Ms. Green and see where we go.
Sure.
Would you please raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please state and spell your name for the record.
Teresa A. Green, TERESA, ACREAN.
Thank you.
So the funding, as detailed earlier, we have $11.75 million under grant agreement currently through the different sources mentioned, congressionally directed federal earmark, 2024 green bond, and $3.75 million from the city's general obligation bond. Protect grant, we do not yet have a grant agreement signed. It has been going through the NEPA, National Environmental Policy Act process, which is at the finish line. Director Riccio could speak in more detail about what that means, because he has been leading that process on behalf of the city as the Director of Public Services. But we do not yet have a signed grant agreement from Federal Highway for the Protect grant, which is in the amount of $11 million.
Are there time limits on your other three grants?
There are, yes,
What are they?
we've aligned all of those grants for which we have agreements to be completed by 2031.
Thank you. That's all I need to know. Appreciate it.
The council in a posture for a motion, but keep in mind though, it's that one, we have to address the special exception request, and then after that, address the application of the toll.
Well, if we don't grant the special exception, there's no reason to address the application. Well, correct?
I believe the special exception is just addressed
If
to
we
the,
choose not to modify the application, and we don't grant the special exception,
Then it ends there.
thank you.
Hey, Mr. Starr, had his hand raised.
Because I was just gonna say, reading the reports here, just part of it, we talked about riprap in 2023, and at September meeting was CRMC staff engineer. And then it says additionally, the engineer consultant GZA agreed that this was not necessary at this meeting. And then further on, I just have issues with these, with both the city officials and city engineers agreed that that portion was, the proposal was not necessary. And that was in January. It just seems odd to me that things have changed.
All right.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
May I make one comment? It's my understanding that, that if the staff's recommendation were to be followed, that the recommendation to approve the project on either side of the outcrop would be granted, subject to just removing that section and modifying the plan. Not an all or nothing scenario.
That's correct.
I would agree, because in my opinion, that's a modification to the application.
Good.
I mean, when we're done with them and we're in discussion, I'd like to start a discussion on that, but I don't want them chiming in once we start our discussion.
Okay. Is there a motion?
No, are we? Oh, okay. Yeah, I'll make a motion that the application as presented does not meet the three criteria for a special exception. And as such, the special exception shouldn't be granted. And if I get a second, I'd like to.
Second. Motion made by Mr. Rabideau, seconded by Mr. Sullivan. Is there discussion?
Yes.
Well, I think from my perspective, the applicant owner has made it clear that if we grant partial approval, they're not going to allow access to the property. The applicant owner's engineer and the city of Newport's engineer have both on the record stated that there may be alternatives available that haven't been looked at that could shore up the area of concern, which is the Stone Arch Bridge and possibly the overlook area. So instead of us modifying his application, let them go back to the drawing board. Staff has already seen this. It's a City of Newport project, so there's no application fee. And we could get it back here in short order if they come up with an alternative that would meet staff's, the consideration. And then we can look at it again, and instead of us trying to modify this application and then letting them do their thing, and they're back here anyway. Their grant money doesn't have to be spent till 2031. And they don't have the lion's share or the 50% federal grant yet anyway. So time from what I've heard under, the testimony today is not a critical factor. So again, I would make a motion that they have not met the 3 criteria of special exception, which is, the compelling public purpose. All reasonable steps taken to minimize environmental impacts. And 3, there are no reasonable alternative means to serve the compelling public purpose. And as such, we should grant a special exception on the project as presented.
So that motion is made and it's been seconded, he just restated it. We're in discussion.
And just to clarify that motion, Mr. Revenue, and the second, is that based on the discussion here tonight, the testimony provided?
My motion is based on the expert testimony by our staff, the expert testimony presented by the City of Newport, and the expert testimony presented by the owners. All of those factors, as I have heard them, did not rise to, our staff basically didn't support the special exception. But the nothing in the applicant's presentation presented the information that to me would overcome the special exception criteria.
Thank you. And Dr. Sullivan, that your second is.
I agree
With
with
that
Mr. Abadu on 2 out of the 3, but the second was based upon, again, staff testimony, all witness testimony and commentary tonight.
Thank you.
Okay, so floor is still open on discussion. That motion on Mr. Sullivan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think this is one of those ones where it's the baby in the bathwater. I would hate to see, frankly, the city move ahead with the 2 ends. But we do not have the necessary, for me, alternatives analysis to look at, what else might be done. And I have not heard, I've heard 1 out of 3 engineers saying this will solve it, or this addresses the better. So for me to be voting for a bifurcated is troubling when I think I accept the rationale, do it all. Potentially is good, but I see the law and our rules is prohibiting me from doing that because I don't have the alternatives analysis that allows me to make judgment on what degree of protection, So I would like to approve a whole project, but I cannot under what we have before us do that.
Okay, I'm gonna ask our attorney procedurally then, can we table it and afford them an opportunity should they desire? Then bring it back?
Absolutely. If that's the pleasure of the applicant, either the council can move forward with a vote, if the applicant wishes to request a continuance so that they can come back with some plans that might satisfy the council or reasonable alternatives. The council is within its authority to grant that continuance.
Yes, Mr. Gagnon.
I think we do have a plan that is approvable that was submitted right off the bat, that staff supported, that described how to make the ends, turns, so that they do not cause the erosion or the problem that the applicant is claiming may happen. And I think Mr. Lucia kind of described that plan, what can be approved, what was ready to be approved. that you, at the first run of this, that it changed because of political influence and not allowing, access.
But approving that plan is moot because the owner's not gonna allow access. So why should we approve that plan? Why should we approve that? Why should we modify?
Why shouldn't we give in to the extortion?
No, but why should?
I'm not willing to.
If we don't grant the special exception, we put the ball back in their court. To meet with staff and come up with another one. Or if, again, if they choose to, seek a continuance and they're willing to go forward and meet with staff and try and work something out, I withdraw my motion. But if that's not the case, I should vote on my motion.
Yeah, I just respond to you if I may, Mr. Chair. I think Mr. Rabbit was putting this down the road a month or 2 months, allowing some coherent conversation focused on alternatives and others that would change my comfort zone, might result in a better project, might change staff's mind, might provide us with a solid reason to vote. I can't the way it is. I wouldn't vote for a bifurcation at this time, even though I seconded the motion.
I understand, I just didn't want to let
All
original and what the staff was,
right. The staff's done a fine job. I support the staff. I believe in the staff.
Mr. Chair, can I, may I, on behalf of the owner,
Staff on.
Right now, we're in discussion. Any other council member just want to share thoughts on it for us right now?
Well, I was just gonna say, if we do deny the special exemption, is that automatically without prejudice, or would we have to add that to the motion?
You'd have to add without prejudice to the motion.
Okay.
I'll gladly add that to the motion when you appropriate time.
Does the star want to comment?
I was just gonna comment, the continuance that was suggested may sounds good. And it'll come back with revised plan with some alternatives. And maybe better than voting it down now, but
It's not voting it down, it's not granting the special exception.
that's what I meant.
We're not, I think the discussion here has been, everybody sees the project as worthwhile and important.
Yeah. So there was no difference then, is there, between denying the exception and accepting the continuances? Practically, it's so it comes out the same way.
No, if they were willing to, continue, I'd withdraw my motion if they're willing to meet with staff and work towards a resolution, but if they're not, then I would ask for a vote on my motion.
Okay.
Not to force their hand, but to force their hand.
Yeah, thank you, Chair.
The city is more than welcome to the opportunity to work with staff and if this matter is continued to try to bring us to a satisfactory resolution to get this project moving forward.
I want to follow up on a date certain.
Well, I want to make sure Mr. Scott is also.
I concur.
Thank you. Then with that, Mr. Chairman, I withdraw my motion. Mr. Sullivan.
Well, so to grant a continuance on this.
Second. Motion's been made to grant a continuance and seconded. Any discussion on that?
Do we want a date certain, given 60 days, 90 days, 120 sometimes, so it just doesn't languish out there, but.
Well, if they want to have a show thing.
Yeah, I think I choose them.
Yeah, I don't really need to put a 60 date certain on them. I think they want to get done as quick as possible. Too, so as soon as they're done, they'll come in front.
Would it have to be advertised? Renoticed?
Yeah.
I think that, then there's no real benefit putting in dates, right?
Right. All right, so a motion is made and seconded to continue the matter to allow the parties to further discuss the matter and issues with CRMC staff. Go poll the council, voice of that, Mr. Starr. Aye. Mr. Izzy.
Aye.
Mr. Sullivan.
Aye.
Mr. Bernardo.
Aye.
Mr. Avedon.
Aye.
Mr. Gagnon.
Aye.
I do report a vote aye. That'll be continued. To afford the parties an opportunity to continue discussions. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Have nothing else to come before us, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. So, motion made and seconded, all in favor, say aye.
That was, it was,
Opposed?
it asked, but maybe.
Yeah.
Get the time, it's like.